Hey, what's going on YouTube? Hey, I am at Fay Myers Motorcycle World here in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Just real quick, by the definition of the word perfect, if something is perfect, then you would assume that it cannot be improved upon, right? And if you've watched my videos on the 1290 Super Duke, then you already know that I call that the perfect motorcycle. So in theory, the 1290 Super Duke cannot be improved upon, right? Well, not so fast. Enter the KTM 2024 1390 Super Duke. And I am here to take this guy for a test ride today and see if KTM was indeed able to improve on perfection. And everything I've read and seen so far, they may just have done that. So we're gonna find out today. I'm gonna go take this thing on a test ride and see if the beast has become even badder. So let's go get some gear on and take this guy out for a ride. Oh man. Okay, the first thing I'm going to say is the power delivery on the bike is even smoother than the 1290. I'm not going to say that you can feel the cam shift working. Owning the 1290, I can say that I can tell that the camshift technology is working on the motor, because even my 1290, as refined as it is over the earlier models, you can definitely feel the power come on once you start to really get on the throttle into the higher RPMs. But on this one, with the camshift technology, it just seems smooth from the very start, right off the line, up until it's time to shift. So good job KTM on that camshift technology. It works very well. The brakes, of course, Brembo brakes, they work good. No, they work great. The one thing that I love about my Super Duke and Super Dukes in general, you know, I've owned lots of bikes that can go very fast, but you can get yourself in trouble with going too fast, and then all of a sudden you just can't slow down fast enough. These guys bite, and they bite hard, but they feel very controlled as well. It's never like a it's never a jerky feeling or a feeling of loss of control. Just smooth braking. Now this bike here has been unlocked for the purpose of this test ride, and it is in demo mode. So with that, you do not get the full operations of the bike. So for instance, right now I don't have quick shift, but I do have all 5 modes. I have rain mode, street mode, sport mode, performance mode, and track mode, along with the throttle sensitivity and all that other stuff that comes with track and performance mode. So all of that is opened up on this bike right now. I'll get into some of the other newer menu items over last year here briefly. For instance, your anti-wheelie mode, you have you know, on the older bikes you just had on or off, whereas this one you can control. You can get a very small amount of lift off, a large amount of lift off, or no wheelie mode, no anti-wheelie whatsoever. Loop it if you want to, right? But the screen is a little more busy than
the previous models. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Now when you're in track mode, you have the lap timer, which is kind of front and center, which is cool if you're trying to, you know, put those good times in. The bike sounds fantastic. Really like the sound. It sounds very similar to the 1290, but a little more refined. I would say is the word I would use. It's more refined. So let's see, at 70 miles an hour, 6 gear, not happy with it. If I give it some throttle, it is a little shaky, but that's the same with all the Super Dukes. 6 gear is almost unnecessary. You have to be going quite fast to need 6th gear. That's why on my personal one, I went down in the front 1 tooth, made 6th gear a little bit more usable. Now, one thing I didn't need a test ride to know is that even at 6'4", this bike is very comfortable. I have taken my 1290 on some pretty long 300 plus mile days without any soreness or stiffness or discomfort at all, and that this bike has essentially the same specs when it comes to all that. So really the big difference is the addition of some electronics. As far as now, you have standard, you have the WP semi-active suspension, and the TFT display has changed a little bit. Oh, don't know what I did there. I think I hit the lap timer. Let's get out of that. So far, I would have to say that the 1390 motor is much smoother than the 1290 of the previous generation. Just sitting at a light, it seems much smoother. Almost like a Ducati V-twin. This bike feels much more manageable. You know, the original versions of the Super Duke, you know, true hooligan bikes, they were temperamental, they would buck you off if you weren't careful, things like that. And then of course now with the 1290, the Gen 3, very refined. This bike takes that to another level. I almost can't feel the motor running underneath my seat. I mean, I can, but it doesn't have the growl like my 1290. So my 1290, when it's sitting at a stoplight, it's like a horse in the starting gate, and it wants to go. This bike seems much more comfortable sitting at idle. It still has the attitude when you want it, but almost like it just kind of puts it to bed when it's not needed, right? And if you ask for it, it'll come out. Otherwise, it's happy to just sit here and kind of be mellow. But when you call on it and you roll on that throttle, it's ready to go. But just sitting here, you know, just going down the road here, you know, 40 something miles an hour in 3rd gear, very smooth, very comfortable. Roll on the gas and it's ready to go. Very impressive what they've done with this motor. This bike, you roll on the throttle, next thing you know, you look down and you're doing 80 miles an hour. And I had no idea. I mean, the power delivery is so smooth. It's just amazing. Now I'm purposely not revving it too high. It is a new motor. This is going to be sold to somebody. I don't want to do anything that's going to cause the break-in period to not be done properly. So I'm shifting early for certain, but don't really need to shift all that high into the RPM range. It's so smooth. What a bike. And it really turns gracefully. It dives into the corners and recovers from the corners just as well.
Wow, what a machine this thing is. And you know, I thought there couldn't be a better place to stop and talk about this gorgeous orange beast than right here at the Broncos training facility, right? So luckily we have it here available to us. All right, riding this bike is a different thing than riding the previous 1290. So much more smooth, so much more refined. But before we get into that, let's talk about the difference in looks in the current model 2024 1390 over the previous 1290R. The first thing I noticed is the incredible front headlight on this bike. It is so cool. To me, these resemble mandibles or pinchers, right? Kind of saying, don't get too close or you're gonna get bit. The 1290, like my bike, I always thought that the front headlights looked like a wasp, which was super cool in and of itself. But these ones more resemble the mandibles of something that's gonna try to eat you if you get too close. Love it. So they have the light is basically, it's got a high beam and a low beam that works with a projection bulb in the center, and then on the sides is your daytime running lights. Just a wicked looking front light. KTM, great job with that. I'll tell you what, it looks fantastic. The next big thing you notice is the turn signals. They are quite a departure from previous model turn signals. Very sleek looking. The old ones were amber color. These are white, front and back. They're more of a linear shaped turn signal instead of a teardrop shaped like the older ones. And they also complement the rest of the bike very well. They're very angular like the bike is. Now, this motorcycle for this year comes in two colors, orange or black. That's all you got. Fortunately, they're both super cool, so it doesn't really matter. The LC8 motor from the previous bikes has been made larger. It's now a 1350cc bike. Don't let the 1390 confuse you. It is a 1350cc motor with 188 horsepower and 107 pounds of torque. It's amazing. So it's roughly 10 horse over the 1290 and about 5 pounds of torque over the 1290. It has camshaft technology, which works so good. The one thing I noticed, you can't feel the camshaft technology working on the bike per se. But if you have a 1290 like I do, you can tell that there is camshaft technology in this motor, because on the 1290, when you crack that throttle open, it is just rip roaring, wants to buck you off of the bike, and it's just mean. With the 1390, the camshaft technology provides smooth power transition from off idle all the way to the high end of the RPM range. A couple of times I got on the gas, and when I looked down, I said, oh crud, I'm going faster than I want to be, right? You don't even realize it because it's such a constant power transmittal from the engine to the tire to the ground, all right? So whereas the 1290 has a very steep torque curve, the 1390 is a much more linear torque curve. So it provides power, a usable power from start to finish. I really, really like it. Now I will say, if you are into the raw gruntiness of the 1290 Super Duke, then this motor is not going to excite you the way the 1290 does. I personally prefer the super grunty, you never know what you're gonna get, is this thing gonna kill me kind of motor. This is not it, this is much smoother. And also in the front here, you have air dams that are almost a ram air injection through the headlight into the two side scoops that ram air into the now shorter but higher volume air box, and also into the larger throttle bodies, which gives the bike even more smooth acceleration than it had over the 1290. The 1390 also has a half-gallon larger gas tank than the previous years. When I was riding, it was telling me when I first jumped on it in track mode that I had 180 miles on this tank, which is really good. On my Super Duke 1290, I get about 170 miles on street or sport mode, not in track mode. So that's pretty good. You got even more range on a bike that is even easier to ride, you know, in city and kind of, you know, urban areas than a sport bike, which about 110 miles maybe to a tank full. Now you get 180 miles on this thing before you have to stop and put some more go-go juice in it, which is really, really cool. The new 1390 comes standard with the WP semi-active electronic suspension, another upgrade over last year. I have the Evo, but the Evo cost, it was an additional cost to get that electronic suspension. So this one comes standard, electronic suspension up front and in the back. Now, KTM opted to put the Michelin Power GP tires on the bike this year over the Bridgestone Battle Axes that they've been using for the past couple of years. I found them to be very, very good at what they do. Very grippy on the corners for sure, and very stable while going down the road. Really great tire, I like it a lot. Also, you can, like previous Super Dukes, you can change your shift pattern to the MotoGP style. So, you know, 1 up and then 5 down. That's what I run on my Super Duke. I prefer it actually, and if I was to buy this one, I would do the same with it. But that's personal preference. But just know that you can do that with this bike. Now, one of the improved maintenance stats with this bike is the valve adjustments have changed from 18,000 to 37,000 miles, which is a huge improvement. So you won't even need to take it in for that valve adjustment for double the length of previous editions of the Super Duke. Now, some of the things that have been carried over from previous years, one thing is this nice wide seat, okay? You can tell this bike is designed to keep you comfortable while you're rip-roaring around town, all right? This seat is very comfortable. It's not very thick, but it does have a good wide portion to sit on and good gel underneath it. It's very comfortable. Also, 4-position adjustable handlebars like previous versions. The all of the gauge or all of the switches on the handlebars have remained the same. Up here you have a C1 and a C2 switch, so you can program your two most used things that you use on the bike. For instance, if you wanted to program your ride height adjustment, put that in C1. And then you can change your anti-wheelie mode, for instance, from on to off. You can do that in C2. Or whatever it is you choose to put in those two pre-positioned, so you don't have to go through the wheel and through the TFT and the menu and all that. You can just hit either C1 or C2 and get that function at your fingertips. The TFT is still a 5-inch TFT that is super bright and easy to read. They have changed the display up a little bit for this year. Over previous years, it's a little more busy if you ask me, but it does provide you with more information as well. Maybe the thought being that you don't have to scroll through the menu as much to find what you're looking for. It's all there on the screen for you. One thing I did notice when you're in track mode, if you just push the button here on the wheel to the right one, you go into your lap timer, which is really cool. The lap timer will be on the screen regardless, but if you want just the lap timer, you don't want all of that other information distracting you, you just want to concentrate on your laps, you can go into that and use your lap timer that way. So this bike is in demo mode, which gave me, fortunately, all 5 of the engine management modes: rain, street, sport, performance, and track. But it did not engage, or it did not open up the quick shifter. That has to be set, I think, through the programming. So I didn't have the quick shifter on this. I can only imagine how fast this thing is with the quick shifter. I've been riding a quick shifter bike for quite some time now, and to go back to having to use the clutch, you realize just how much faster you are with a quick shifter, which is what it's designed for. So, but otherwise, it was still a joy to ride. This thing is so fun to ride. Again, the biggest difference between the 1390 Super Duke and the 1290 is that this motor is so much more refined. Almost, I dare say, it almost feels kind of like a V4 Ducati would, right? Very, very smooth, very refined, but still plenty of power delivery. So very cool bike to ride, no doubt. So also for this year, for the 1390, there are these air dams on the side of the radiator that increase down force at higher speeds, keep the wheels from slipping, keep everything planted on the ground well. I didn't get this bike up fast enough to really put those to work, but they look pretty cool too. So, you know, bonus, right? Okay, like with all Super Dukes, you're still gonna need to buy the tech pack if you want to open this bike up to its full potential. If you don't buy the tech pack, then you're just going to get the rain, street, and sport modes. You will not get performance or track. You will also not get the quick shifter. And with the 1390, there's a few other extra gee whiz things that you get along with that tech pack. The 1290 tech pack runs about $750. I haven't seen any specs yet on what the tech pack is going to run on this new 1390, but I would imagine it's going to be about the same. It's just something you have to deal with when you like KTMs. Is it worth it? Absolutely. If you're going to spend the money to buy this bike, I think you'd be foolish not to buy the tech pack. Maybe you're a rider who thinks, well, I'm not ready for all of that power just yet, but you will be at some point, and then you're going to regret not having the tech pack. So I highly suggest you buy the tech pack. Okay. Now let's talk about how does this bike compare to the other Super Nakeds. Well, if you ask me, it doesn't, because KTM built this bike. It was a concept of, it was created as a Super Naked. It was not just a super sport bike that they pulled a bunch of fairings off, detuned the engine a little bit and said, here's a naked bike. This thing was conceived as a Super Naked. And that makes it so much more comfortable and rideable than the other Super Nakeds, in my opinion. Also, KTM, they knew that that's what they wanted from this bike. So they built a motor that's going to provide the most fun out of riding a Super Naked bike wherever it is you're riding. This bike is so much fun. Now, is it going to beat the Ducatis, the R1s, the Aprilia RSVs on the racetrack? Probably not, but it is going to keep up with them pretty darned well. And when it's doing what it's designed to do, which is to be your daily driver, having fun, getting from place to place, it outshines them all, if you ask me, right? Just my opinion. But I have never gotten on my Super Duke and had a bad day. It's impossible to not just have smiles for miles while you're riding this bike. So that being said, if you're looking for something that will give you W's on the racetrack, this is probably not the bike, but it will get you super close to that. The other manufacturer bikes, super nakeds, are really just their super sports, pared down, take some stuff off of them, detune the engine. So if you want a true hooligan super sport or super naked bike, I think this is it. And I think you'd be very happy with it if that's what you're looking for. Okay guys, well, that is it for the review of the 2024 KTM 1390 Super Duke R. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a great big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate every single one of my subscribers. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well so you get notified whenever I put out a new video. And again, thank you so much for being a patron of my channel. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you out riding on the road one day.